Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Politics. Happy post 4th of July. I hope you had a lovely holiday, although I wasn't exactly celebrating. There's nothing to celebrate. America is not a democracy, it's an oligarchy. Always remember that. Sorry if your kids are watching. Gotta speak the truth.
Speak the truth.
As always, Make America Sane again. That's makeamericasane.com. And I got a special guest today. Did you even know TYT had a new reporter? I missed the announcement.
Hello.
Andrew Jones, my brother from another mother. And Andrew's been doing great stuff for TYT on the Medium page, as well as on youtube.com/TYT Politics. And it's funny because I texted him earlier and I was like, yo, we need to talk about this story. And I didn't even realize he had just done a video on it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it. Of course, the corporate media industrial complex has been coming after Bernie hard.
Those a-holes.
Now that he's the most popular politician in America, I'm going to briefly read you the latest, and we'll talk about it. GOP source of fraud allegation for Bernie Sanders' wife admits info was hearsay. Hearsay means bullshit. So let me just read you a little bit. If you didn't know, there's basically an FBI investigation right now into Jane Sanders. So no FBI investigation into the North Dakota police force that brutalized unarmed Americans.
Nope.
No investigations into the police departments across the country.
Nope.
No investigations into the banks. Only against Bernie Sanders and Jane Sanders. Anyway, there's an FBI investigation basically about a 2010 loan that Burlington College, Burlington, Vermont, Jane Sanders was the president at the time. They're investigating whether she misled in outreach to get donations.
Yep.
So let me read you this. A Republican lawyer who reported independent U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and his wife to federal officials was passing on information he heard from a GOP lawmaker who said he didn't have direct knowledge of the allegations. So, translated, the source who fed and accused Bernie and Jane Sanders basically of fraud to the FBI, essentially was playing telephone. He heard this from somebody else and then made the accusation to the FBI, and then the FBI essentially opened up an investigation.
And then what makes it even funny is that this guy that refuted, who was Torson's source, this exclusive source that Torson said was the guy that gave him this information on Bernie maybe possibly influencing this bank to give this loan, this $6.5 million loan. This source, Don Turner, who is the House Republican in Vermont, the minority leader in Vermont in terms of the House in Burlington, was basically like, I wouldn't file this charge if I was doing this, and I don't know where he got that information from. So this guy who's been banked on as Torson's source, and by the way, this Torson dude, he's obsessed with going after any Democratic or left foe. I mean, he's obsessed as Macy's are with the damn fireworks every 4th of July.
And Torcy's a lawmaker in Vermont.
Yep, he's a lawmaker in Vermont, and not only that, he's also someone that's been a big GOP political hack throughout the years. He went after Democratic Governor Peter Shimlin when Peter Shimlin was the governor at the time, when he thought that he could get Peter Shimlin in a story where it seemed like Shimlin was possibly taking advantage of someone with a disability in regards to getting a property purchase from the deals that they had with his neighbor. So this guy, Torson, doesn't waste any opportunity to be a bootleg scale Karl Rove, because he's a bootleg Karl Rove. And he was also a prominent Trump operative and a Trump operative in Vermont this past election cycle. So this guy,
I think he was Trump's campaign manager in Vermont.
Yeah. He was that role. So
Yeah.
he's a guy that's fully invested in GOP circles. His parents were prominent in Republican circles during the Reagan years, apparently, from what I've learned. So this guy is basically a bunch of politically crafted conservative bullshit, as he is.
And by the way, shocker, CNN picked up this story that Jane Sanders was...
they didn't waste time. They were goody.
They picked up that Jane Sanders was on investigation, New York Times, all the usual suspects.
Yep.
And I'm sure they're going to correct it, of course, now that we have this. Let me tell you a little more. The source of the information was Republican State Representative Don Turner, the minority leader of the Vermont House. Turner told WCAX-TV that friends at the bank described pressure from Sanders' office, but he says those friends didn't have direct knowledge of the negotiations. Turner says he told taunting about it in May 2016, adding that he would not have brought it to the attention of federal investigators.
Yep.
So really, what this is the equivalent of like me tweeting that I saw Bernie Sanders bench press 250 pounds and like GQ running a cover that Bernie Sanders, fucking Hercules.
Or even better, like seeing Bernie Sanders hit 40 straight three-pointers because
Right.
he loves his basketball stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
And this isn't me being a Bernie bro. This is me being a journalist who is defending truth. Because obviously, I don't have any inside information. If you do, let me know if Bernie's going to run again. But they're already starting in the corporate media to pick up anything they can against this man or his wife. Now you're starting to see segments. They did a segment today with the guy running against Paul Ryan in Wisconsin about single payer. CNN like took some bullshit statistic from some think tank that single payer is going to cost $32 trillion, which is nonsense.
Yep.
And they were just like pressing this guy. Well, how are you going to pay for it? I don't remember CNN asking how Donald Trump or Republicans were going to pay for the 54, was it billion or trillion? I think billion.
Yeah.
$54 billion extra
almost a trillion
they
right
want to
now.
spend on defense. I don't remember CNN saying, well, how are we going to pay for these oil subsidies to big oil or these bank deregulations or all these things? Only if it's single payer. One more thing about this. Tone Singh, an attorney who served as Donald Trump's Vermont representative during last year's presidential campaign, said he was standing by his allegation. This was not a country store crack barrel rant, Tonsing said. He noted that hearsay is used by investigators to develop direct evidence. So you know what hearsay isn't used for? FBI investigations.
Exactly.
So the fact that the FBI, by the way, under Barack Obama, this opened. This investigation opened under Loretta Lynch, and Barack Obama was still president. You're not supposed to open an investigation into hearsay. You're supposed to have some concrete evidence to even merit an investigation.
And how the standard conservative approach to when they're called out on their menacity and overall the shit is to not just realize, you know what, I messed up. It was just hearsay. Why did I try to push this for an FBI investigation? What they do is like, nope. Full steam ahead. That hearsay is part of the investigation. And blah, 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 to try to continue to confuse and obscure people who casually don't have the time to call them out on their BS. And yet this fool is continuing to push that whole narrative. And even worse, it's already bad enough you're dealing with the characters of craziness like them on the right. When it's the liberals online who jumped all over the place when this came out last Saturday, before this past Saturday, when this story broke, when they were all over the place, the Peter Dopey Dial, the Amandi, I have a grudge with leftist Grandy, all the usual obsessed Bernie haters that have prominence overall, at least online, they were jumping all over this. They were saying that, oh, you know who's not under FBI investigation? Hillary Clinton. You know who's under FBI investigation? Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Coincidence? But meanwhile, of course, Bernie Sanders, this is Jane Sanders that's getting investigated for this. So Bernie's not even technically in that whole investigation whatsoever. But do they want to have the full facts get in the way of the narrative? No, so they'll just continue with their narrative of BS hate and try to say, aha, Bernie wouldn't have won, and all this other nonsense because they still are so obsessed with how Bernie just keeps it real on them and how they're about their bullshit.
But I just want to point out, because you know that I take on conspiracy theorists all the time. I'm not going to feed you bullshit.
Yep.
But I do have like a slightly titsy-bitsy conspiracy theory.
Break it down.
And I think there's fact.
Break it down, JC. What's that conspiracy? What's the theory?
So this whole loan was in 2010. Why is the FBI under Barack Obama and Loretta Lynch? By the way, Loretta Lynch, who met with Bill Clinton on the airplane for 30 minutes while Hillary was under investigation. Loretta Lynch, who apparently tried to get James Comey to not investigate the Clinton Foundation. Why all of a sudden would the FBI be investigating a loan from 6 years ago?
2010.
Right.
2010.
Why? That in an election year, maybe because if it got close between Bernie and Hillary in the primary, or God forbid to the establishment, Bernie won the nomination, they were going to leak it out that Bernie and Jane Sanders was under investigation, I don't think that's too far-fetched.
And just like on the whole merit, even if you look beyond the whole 6 years finally for this to be in an FBI investigation, if you look at what they even trying to claim here, as some colleges in the past have probably stated, you know, presidents, I've gotten this amount of donations, or I will get these donations at a certain time. That's happened before. The thing that's the weirdest thing that I feel about this whole situation is that this bank does not appear that they had any pressure whatsoever to give her this loan. If they didn't think that she had the full resources, the full donations that she promised for this loan in general, then why the hell did they give this loan in the first place? It's not her fault if they decided, well, we trust you enough where we just feel that you have enough credibility in this, so we'll give you the loan or whatnot. It's not her fault in regards to if they wanted to give her the loan because they decided to make that decision and stuff. So that thing is overlooked completely in everybody's rush from the center left all the way to the rabbit right and trying to just basically say, aha, like you guys, they're scam artists, they're frauds. Look at them, look at the Sanders. Like, what are you going to say about that now, Bernie Bros? And overlooking even that aspect where you could say to yourself, maybe Jane Sanders, did she manage the situation well in regards to this lakefront campus, in regards to the donations, and did the money get managed properly? You can clearly say that it probably wasn't managed properly in that situation. But even with that aside, that doesn't impugn any action that was illegal whatsoever. And again, the bank didn't have to give her this loan. So that, any argument they can even make for that, for any wrongdoing, which is like not even wrongdoing, it's probably financially screwing up stuff, but even that argument is brushed to the side by rational people and shit.
I wanna make one point. So you have all this nonsense out there about the fake news epidemic. This fake news epidemic, and of course, there's definitely like trolls on the internet that spread fake news.
Yep.
There's literally like fake stories on Facebook and this and that. But if an outlet like CNN, the New York Times, reports things like Bernie Sanders, Jane Sanders under federal investigation, which is true, they are under federal investigation, but then pushes very suspect information. If places like CNN, New York Times continually report that 17 U.S. intelligence agencies all agree Russia hacked the DNC, Podesta, all these things.
Breathlessly.
Credit, by the way, to the New York Times. They did issue a correction. Frankly, they should issue a retraction, but that's a different story. Well, when all these outlets get it wrong, don't correct themselves, isn't that fake news?
It's not only fake news, it's just trying to go and have the public not even recognize that, oh, we screwed up. Like, let's acknowledge that fully all the way. Instead, it's like, let's slip it under the rug. And you know, and honestly now, like, you're gonna see that online like after a day after the story. Let alone when they change headlines, when they know they changed the headline, which is another slick thing they love to do. They love to change headlines, as we saw constantly throughout the primary, but also what they've been doing since the last, I would say, 20 years, or like at least trying to have the both ways nine-fence and shit. So it's how slick they are in regards to not only corrections and retractions and trying to make sure it's not peripheral to anybody or the general public, but how they do those other little things, those other little edits that aren't going to be shown on the right side of a page. This article was revised for a certain reason.
Hey, you've worked for digital media. I've worked for digital media. They do it all the
Come on.
time. I've been guilty of changing a headline, not because I got something wrong, but because I wanted, I was under pressure to get more page views or whatever it is, and the information might have not been wrong, but it certainly wasn't a lot of context. I want to flip the camera around for a second. Our friend Sam Siegel.
Look at this man right here.
The editor of TYT. Behind him is my beautiful dog, Rusty.
There you go, Rusty, with the background.
Oh, hold on. Let me zoom in here so you can get Rusty.
Get that stunner shot, Rusty.
Rusty's having a good life. So, Sam, you've been listening to Andrew and I. I think broader, what we're seeing now is the playbook in case Bernie wants to run again.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to really go off of what Andrew was saying about all the commentary from the so-called Democrats, Peter Dow, Joy Airy.
Keep it real,
you know, this really shows these guys' true colors because, you know, Bernie is legitimately. Bernie wants more from what the Democrats are offering right now, but everything that they want, Bernie wants just a little bit more, and yet anything that they can that they can get their hands on to really try to bring this man down, they're going to try it at every cost. This is one report of alleged FBI investigation that's happening right now, and when you actually look into the information of the board members, for instance, of Burlington College, they said they never spoke about Jane Sanders once. Numerous board members that they asked, did they ever ask you about Jane Sanders? Not once did they ask about Jane Sanders, which makes you think that it's more of an investigation of the matter of Burlington College and what actually happened in its fall than Jane Sanders and how she conducted herself specifically. Another thing to it is that, you know, a guy like Peter Dow loves to make himself, he loves to get on this high horse and say, I don't disagree with Bernie on the politics. I don't dislike Bernie personally. I just don't like his attacks on Hillary Clinton, and that's the reason for my anger towards him and his people. But at the end of the day, Peter Dow will find any sort of reason to bring Bernie down without any sort of evidence or facts. We don't have any type of real understanding of the matter.
Let's not give Peter Dow so much love. He's a very insignificant person. I'm more worried about CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, all the old folks. You know, I love some of our older viewers, but I'm talking like CNN is the youngest at 58. I'm not knocking older people, but like cable news is an older demographic, the New York Times reader an older demographic, and them smearing with half-truths or complete lies already in 2017, Bernie, does not bode well because a lot of people, I could tell you, I was around the country, believe nonsense.
Well, that's why with Sam mentioning him and me mentioning him and also that is because these characters and these fools still regularly appear on these networks and still have these asinine segments that
John Podesta has a column in the Washington Post, for God's sakes.
So like we were anticipatively like waiting to read that new John Podesta column. Wow, this enthralling figure. The only thing that would be even more egregious to read would be a Tom Friedman post about a cab ride and shit. So but that just shows you that again, they are still at the center where they'll use these clowns and have them on the segments and legitimize them. That's why, personal note here, like I used to be pretty friendly with Chris Hayes a little bit throughout the years overall, but I always would tell him, like, Chris, why do you have these horrible people on? Just like I would say whenever Keith Olbermann would have horrible people like Howard Fineman and anybody that's in centrist Beltway media. So when you see more throughout the course of like the election, he's having on the likes of Jennifer Rubin, who's a conservative hack of conservative hacks, who is just going to always be a Reagan girl, like almost the number 2 Reagan girl after Peggy Noonan. Yes, of course, the standard Reagan girl. But when you have like the likes of him, or when you have the likes of the Florida congressman that they've had on repeatedly, I forgot like his name, but they've had he was a Republican guy that they've had on repeatedly, had him on constantly. They feature all these people on these shows and legitimize them and let them have this prominence to say what they want to say on Bernie or the left, and just continue to have them on.
By the way, correct, sorry if I'm wrong, it's either MSNBC or CNN. One of them just hired as a contributor Bret Stephens of the New York Times, the climate change denying columnist for the New York Times. Bret Stephens, I believe it was MSNBC, just hired him as a contributor. Hugh Hewitt, they just hired as a contributor. Another wacko bird.
I think they were trying to give him a show on the weekends. Where nobody's going to watch. As you saw with Greta Van Sustren's show, canceled after 4 months because nobody wants to watch hack conservatives. Nicole Wallace, put on notice.
My final piece on this. Listen, I've always said this. I support Bernie Sanders personally. I never hit it. But if I found out tomorrow Bernie Sanders is embezzling money or scamming or anything like that, I'll be the first one to report it. Yep. It's not like a thing where I'm bowing down to Bernie because I know a lot of the critics will say you're a Bernie bro. What I'm saying is when something doesn't sound right in my gut, typically there's more to the story. So when I heard this and that they were even investigating something from 2010 during the election, I thought this seems like an investigation looking for with a result already in mind rather than actually looking for facts. So we just need to be prepared if Bernie is to run again. Even if he's not prepared to run and he's just supporting 2018 candidates, you're going to see more attempts by the corporate media to sandbag this man and try to basically make him as scandalous as Hillary Clinton was. The bottom line is, if somebody has been pretty Mr. Clean for 40 years, I don't all of a sudden expect mass corruption to be valid.
And then the reason why this story even bubbled up and surfaced again is the fact that his longtime biographer Bernie Sanders, Harry Joffrey, he went to Politico and just basically said, "Oh, the reason why I'm bringing this story up so we can repost it and have it all over the damn place is because Jane and Bernie decided to get lawyers." That's it. It wasn't anything that was new to the story except that. And despite all that, it was like, oh, they got this whole piece. Let's write this all out. When it was just that.
And the media even, oh my God, they got lawyers. They're guilty. Well, what do you want him to do? Just stand there with his fucking extremities in his hand? Oh no, we'll defend ourselves against an FBI inquisition.
Especially with this administration's FBI, and who Lord knows who the hell is going to be in charge next week or whenever the hell the situation is. But they are not going to take any chances and be like, okay, let's just like sit in our hands and have this go away when these partisan hacks want to go after you so much, and especially when you're the most popular politician in the country still, that you still have prominence on the road and still in the Senate. So they're going to obviously still try to go after you with this, especially this Taunton obsessed nutcase who's always been that way in Vermont and always wanted to go after Bernie for years. I mean, this guy was trying to look underneath the rug of the store that Bernie went to purchase a rug at. That's how obsessed this guy is at trying to find any type of dirt that he's looked for years on Bernie and any Democratic or leftist figures in Vermont. And that's why they had to decide to, you know what, we got to get lawyers, we have to retain these legal advice, because what the hell we're going to do if they're going to continue this whole damn thing and drum up the beat on this.
So I will end with this, because I actually have a date tonight. So wish me luck. I got a
exposing
little
all
date
this.
tonight. I got to take a shower.
That's why he's keeping the hat saying again right there.
I got to trim my beard. So let me tell you something. Remember, in America, we just celebrated the 4th of July, about Independence Day, right? There's an FBI investigation. Apparently, the origins of that investigation is a game of telephone that described bad things about Jane Sanders with very little evidence, if it's based on hearsay. Meanwhile, I'm going to repeat this again and again and again. People exercising their First Amendment in North Dakota had their heads beat in, grenades shot at them, tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, you name it. A girl nearly lost her arm. Another girl went blind. Countless with PTSD, hypothermia. You know the story by now. You have African Americans getting brutalized all over the country and murdered, and nothing being done. No FBI investigations into that. No FBI investigations into the Dakota Access Pipeline. You want to know why? You read the Intercept story. The FBI was working with this Blackwater type group.
Surveillance.
Right. No investigations into the banks. None of that. People exercising their First Amendment and Jane Sanders. This is America, folks. And by the way, it's bipartisan. Yes, Trump is awful, but this Sanders investigation was opened under Loretta Lynch and Barack Obama. Standing Rock happened under Barack Obama. So that's why I say, listen, you put a gun to my head, would I rather Tim Kaine than Ted Cruz? Probably.
Because you're a rational person.
Probably.
With a brain.
I'm being honest. But we got to get to a point where we don't need to decide between getting shot in the head or getting shot in the private parts. We got to get away from that. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts is just the fact that first, the saying again he's keeping himself mentally focused for his date later on right there. But it just goes to show you why we have our loyal followers at this channel and the loyal audience, because they've already turned away from that nonsense. It's just the fact that they need to be able to then have more outlets, be able to say this regularly and call these people out on this. And to call these center-left figures who are helping and being useful fools to these conservatives that want to have them be used as examples to try to get at the left any single time, we just have to stand firm towards them and call them out directly. As you said just a few minutes ago, even though Bernie is a noble person, if he does something wrong and I criticize him as you criticize him in regards to foreign policy issues or any stance or having that centrist stance or that general, like regular, conventional American stance about issues, we'll say, hey, Bernie, you need to improve on this. Or, Bernie, what the hell are you doing with this or whatnot? But we know from the man's track record and his history overall that he's not going to be rushing to do some nefarious like scam and forcing a bank to try to then send something out for his wife to get a damn loan deal. When he knows he's got already a lot of skeptics that want to find him slipping for the very least thing already. So the whole thing about that and how it's been ginned up again by just them saying that they were getting lawyers shows how we have to keep on combating centrist corporate media like this to call them out on their BS, because they always try to hide behind the veil of we're objective, we have no bias, when they actually do have a bias in holding the centrist corporate power like this and doing hearsay stories that gin up like this on a regular.
And I'll close with this. Check out my Twitter right after this. I'm going to put this young man's Twitter handle on there. You got to follow him. We got to get his Twitter handle up. This guy is a fucking American treasure here. You got to be following him on Twitter, so I'm going to put his Twitter handle. And if you don't know, TYT Politics has a Twitter also. Yes. At TYT Politics. Follow that.